Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Richard Doc Owen. I am joined in the Hilltop Studios by...
I'm a Surefire.
And,
Uncle Bocce.
Uncle Debachi, full house. You are absolutely correct. We took a break last week. Mm-hmm. There's just no other way of putting it. With no warning whatsoever, we pulled the plug and just took a break. We relaxed. So we're back with a vengeance. We're ready to rock and roll. We are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW, Facebook, Twitter,
all
YouTube,
over.
Instagram.
Everywhere that says Doc Owen Show.
And it's all the same. Just look it up. We have a free app for both the Android and Apple devices, which is really a good deal. You can download it, and it gives you the opportunity at your leisure to listen to the show 5, 10, 15 minutes at a clip. You can fast forward, you can go back, you can repeat, you can share it with your friends, which we highly recommend. The apps are pretty good. The price is right. We also have a new redesigned website called DocOwenShow.com. We now have a store that's attached to it that we are slowly but surely adding merchandise / vendor / connections to. So I highly recommend you go out there and take a look at it. And if there's things that we're missing that you think we should offer, or you would like to see at the Doco, it's like any other store. You tell the store, hey, why don't you carry ABC?
Like you go to the grocery store.
So we'll find a good supplier for ABC. And, the store is basically built on 3 pillars. It's about being a prepared, practical patriot. And under prepared, we got a couple of little side categories called pampered. Guess where that came from? Mm-hmm. And pets. Because we believe that prepared, practical patriots have pets.
That's right.
And need to be pampered from time to time.
And we do.
There you go.
Yes.
So that's what it's all about. We got a really interesting show for you tonight. We're going to do a bit of a departure. Uncle Bocce's done a formidable amount of research. We're going to discuss the Electoral College. I got a feeling we're going to learn where it came from, why it's there, and most importantly, we're going to learn why it is important in a republic, a democratic republic, which is what we are. And it is the mainstay of being a republic as opposed to a simple democracy. Okay?
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's
Am I leading them down the right path?
No, you got it, baby.
Okay. So, and then we'll follow that with I've downloaded we were supposed to have an interview this week, but yours truly wasn't feeling well, so I couldn't conduct the interview. So we're going to have someone that was in front of Congress. Actually, we're going to have 2 clips. I hope we have time for 2 clips. One of them is a chief in the Border Patrol, and the other one is a couple of congressmen. And so the title of the show is Electoral College, Border, and Nonsense. So you can figure out where the congressmen fall in the title of the show.
I wonder. Gee, I'm going to have to find out.
But, our tagline is delivering truth to youth. And there is a lot of truth. It may be temporary. You got to know where to find it on YouTube. Which you can follow the Doc Owen Show channel on YouTube as well. It's as good a place as any.
As any. That's
all right. It's all the same sound and information. So, after those self-grandizing promotions, we begin the show in a very definitive manner, very traditional manner. Ms. Surefire gives us a quotation of an inspirational quotation. Uncle Bocce normally gives us something about history. We're still going to do that today,
yeah,
right?
I have one. Yeah.
And then I close that out originally with a leadership quote. So we'll do that again tonight.
It's usually from the greatest leader of all.
There you go. Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from a site that actually I just Googled and it just popped up there. So I thought it was pretty good. The name of the site is goodreads.com. That's GOOD as in dog, READ as in dog S.com.
Familiar with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Not a musical instrument type read.
No. Okay. So, tonight's quote comes from a gentleman by the name of Roy T. Bennett. And he was listed as just an author.
Boom.
So, he was an author. And his quote is, "Don't be pushed around by the fears in your mind. Be led by the dreams in your heart."
Amen.
I like it.
That's good.
That was a good
That's
one.
very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Give it to him again.
Don't be pushed around by the fears in your mind. Be led by the dreams in your heart.
Absolutely
go.
true. Thus the three of us are here.
That's
Yeah.
I
right.
mean, that has an awful lot to do with it.
It sure does.
Uncle Bocce,
Yes.
what happened? And when?
On tomorrow, the 10th, on that day, because we don't really have anything for today.
All right, everybody, close your ears.
Close your ears. You can't listen. This is not until tomorrow.
Yeah, you're going to have to listen to this tomorrow.
Okay. On this day, the 10th of May, in 1869, the presidents of the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific Railroads meet in Promontory, Utah, and banged in the last strike for the railroad. Last spike. And that was the beginning of our transcontinental railroad.
Nice.
So the East meets the West.
And unlike that cartoon that you see, I'm constantly reminded of this.
I see.
The cartoon. Have you seen where they were putting the two tracks of the railroad together?
Yeah.
And let's say you've got a left and a right.
Yeah.
And they should come together, right, and make one railroad.
Yeah.
But they're off by one track.
Oh,
So they come together and they got a right to a left.
Oh,
Gee
no.
And they sort of all look at each other.
And let's hear it for all the conductors.
Yeah.
We met one.
We met a conductor
Yes.
during last week's activity. So
That's right.
very nice couple.
Uh-huh.
Did you know that the railroad gives you credit for military service towards your retirement benefits if you go to work for the railroad when you get out of the military?
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know
That's
that.
nice.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. I had no whole work for the railroad.
So they take care of the veterans. Our leadership quote tonight is from, well, I'm getting it out of God Bless America, the book that one of our that happens every week. Okay, so it's Psalms chapter 25, verse 21. May integrity and uprightness protect me, because my hope is in you.
Oh, that's good.
Boom.
Nice.
There you go. Short and sweet and to the point.
Very good. Awesome.
So I already told them a little bit about what the show is going to be about, which I normally do right now. I think you're going to enjoy the clips that we got.
Good.
Uncle Bocce, how do we kick this conversation or this lesson you're going to provide us with on the Electoral College?
Okay.
When did the Electoral College start? Day one?
It was day one. Yeah, it was there in the original Constitution.
Okay.
Okay. So
But
yeah,
he's holding his hand up. You can't see that.
Well, because I wanted
He's Italian. Half of what he says, you never hear.
Bacia Galup.
Oh, wow. Ooh, I didn't hear that one before.
Too much sugar for him.
Yeah, ooh.
Well, that's probably true. No, what I wanted to say is that I'd like to title this as The Electoral College has worked successfully for 200 years.
Plus.
So, let's get rid of it. Agreed?
Well, yeah, it's long enough. It's tired. It's old.
Yeah, it is.
We'll package it up and bury it under all of the rest of the historical monuments that are out there. They're not doing us any good.
Yeah.
Hopefully after tonight, you will change your mind on that. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about who invented the Electoral College.
Okay.
And it was in the Constitutional Convention. The main arguer in favor of this was a man by the names of James Wilson. He was from Pennsylvania. However, he was the foremost proponent, but James Madison and all the others, because this was seriously argued in the convention.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it wasn't just, well, this sounds good. No, it was like, I'm at your throat, and this is what we should do. So ultimately, the Electoral College became a compromise, and we'll see why later. Okay? Now, all our listeners out there, I want you to understand this, that electors...
Keep going.
That electors, not voters, pick the president. Yeah, I know. I'm very animated here. So every 4 years, American citizens, they go to the polls and they cast their vote. Who they want to be president, vice president.
Okay, let's get some real basics going here. All right? Mm-hmm. Because you just said a magic phrase. The Electoral College is applicable to what elections?
The presidential elections only.
Exactly.
Okay?
All right.
Because originally, way things were set up, if I may, I may divert here, because the founders, they were genius. They knew that the representatives, or the House of Representatives, were the most closely related to the people.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
So that was the people's house.
Sure.
The Senate was created for the states to have input on the federal government.
Right. And senators were appointed by the governor of each state.
They were, or the legislature, or however the state wanted it to be.
The point is, it was not an elected position. It was not elected by the people of the state.
No, it was not.
Right.
It was because they were representing the state.
They worked for the state, basically.
I mean, it's just part of the checks and balances.
It worked like a champ.
It did. Yeah. It did.
Okay.
So, but you do not vote directly for the candidates. What happens is
in the presidential, you don't vote directly for the candidate.
It goes towards choosing electors, okay, and that's why this group is called the Electoral. It's not really a college, but it's called the Electoral College.
Right.
Now, how many electors? Okay, so there right now are 536 electors. That is equal to the number of districts in the House of Representatives plus the 2 senators from each state. So however many, pardon me?
Plus 1.
Plus D.C.
Yes. 435, 100 senators.
Yeah.
And Washington, D.C.
And Washington, D.C. Yeah.
That's how you get 536.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying that. They are chosen really by the popular vote. At least that's the way they're supposed to be. But it's the popular vote within each state.
Correct.
So whoever wins the popular vote within the state, that is what the electors, how they're supposed to, because they have a group for Democrats, they have a group for Republicans.
So actually, when the election starts, there's 536 times 2. Right? There's 500. Are there 536 Democrats ready to go serve, or are there just 536
people? Well, it depends.
People?
Yeah, no. There's 536 times 2. You would be right, because it's either the Republican or the Democrat, and whoever wins the popular vote in the state, okay, and the way it's set up right now, the states, the Constitution does not even mention how the states were supposed to select their electors.
Right.
It's the states that did that. And 48 of our states have winner takes all.
Yes.
So whoever wins in that state, and there's a reason why that's important. We'll get to it. The states. Lost my track here. Okay, so the number of electoral votes is 538. That's in the electoral college.
538 or 536.
Did we count?
Did you count Puerto Rico?
No. Puerto Rico, I don't think has.
It ought to be 536 then.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. It's a typo. Okay. And what you should know is that the U.S. Constitution created the Electoral College, but the Founding Fathers had fairly little to say about how electoral votes are awarded in each state. So they left that. It was a power they left with the states.
Correct.
Okay? And then the states allotted the number of electors based on their population and number of congressional districts.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So the larger state's population, the more electors
they have
get.
more electors. Right.
Yeah,
that's why during the presidential election you'll hear conversations about, whoever takes California,
right,
or which is one of the largest, if not the largest, electoral votes.
Yes.
That whoever, but the key element to understand is whichever presidential candidate wins the popular vote in that state, the entire state gets 100%, gets the vast majority of them. How many did you say? 40
They're
some
pledged.
odd?
Yeah.
40 some odd.
Like California has 55.
Okay. So whoever takes the statewide vote, popular vote, gets all 55 electoral votes.
That's correct.
In their cubby.
Yeah. As opposed to Wyoming, which only has 3.
Right.
It's so much. They only have 3 electors.
And that's a factor of population, et cetera.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. Now, those electoral votes, excuse me here, the states determine their own. Most states award all their electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins in a popular state.
And there's people
and it is a winner take all.
And there's people constantly trying to erode that aspect of it.
Oh yes, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Because that's why we're doing this, so you have an understanding of why it's important.
Right.
Okay. So all of the states except Nebraska and Maine, winner takes all. In Nebraska and Maine, they apportion it according to
the popular vote.
Right.
If the popular vote's 60-40, then the electoral votes are 60-40.
That's correct.
I got it.
Correct. Okay. So what happens in the Electoral College if no one receives the majority, which is 270 votes, which are needed to win, right? Mm-hmm. So if neither one, if say there's 3 people running on the ballot,
yeah,
and no one of them gets 270, well, then it goes to the House of Representatives,
right,
and they decide,
right,
from the top 3 presidential,
right.
So why do we have the Electoral College? Well, here we go.
Which, by the way, since you brought that up, another reason that the House of Representatives aren't their elections in non-presidential years, or are they
their elections are every 2 years.
Okay.
For the entire House.
Okay.
Every 2 years. Okay. So basically, as Mark Levin would say, if I may say his name, the founders, feared the mob. Now, here's what's important to understand about that, because he's saying that. The founders understood that there was a potential for the tyranny of the majority.
Yeah.
In other words, 51% of the people in the state, in the country, they decide they wanted to go this way. Well, where's everybody else?
Right.
Okay, so and I'll elaborate on
Well, the
that.
tyranny of the mob, they learned the hard way throughout Europe and hundreds of years of history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why, this was such a magnificent idea.
Yep.
Okay, so they created the Electoral College. It was actually a compromise because what was happening in the debate, well, first of all, James Madison, he was part of this too, and he was particularly concerned about holding a popular vote that it would disadvantage some states. Think about that now. Particularly at the time, the southern states were less populated than those in the north. So they wanted to have some say in who the president is going to be. So there was this argument between people who wanted a strict national popular vote, period, and then there were the others who did not want to have a majority of people decide for everybody in the country. Right. So they came to a compromise. And that really did benefit the smaller states, more so that it actually allowed the states to have some say in who is to be our president across the nation.
Yeah, you use the term smaller states. It's the less populous
states. Populous states, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Sure. Okay, so at that point, why would any state that was a less popular state, why would they even want to be a part of the union?
Right.
Okay, so that's one reason why they came to this compromise.
Yeah.
Okay?
They had to feel like their votes counted.
Yeah. Exactly. Here's some statistics that I dug up. There are roughly 3,100 counties in the United States.
Okay.
In this last election, Trump won approximately 2,600 of them.
Yep.
Clinton won just under 500.
Right.
And Trump's county win averaged above 84% of the geographic United States. Geographic, not populous, but geographic.
Right.
And Clinton won 88 of the 100 largest counties. And without those counties, she would have lost by 11.5 million votes in the popular vote. Okay?
Right.
So, in other words, Clinton's votes were very concentrated in only a few states.
Well,
I want you to imagine
even more than that. I would submit to you that Clinton's votes were concentrated in a few major metropolitan areas.
Exactly.
Not just a few states.
No, it was
which is why we have this electoral college thing being statewide.
Absolutely.
So that the big cities don't overrun the rest of the state.
You are absolutely correct. I want you to imagine now the United States flag. You got that picture in your mind? Mm-hmm. And up in the left part there are 50 stars.
Yes.
Well, if we just change that to put stars that for the larger populated states or areas, there would really be 4 big stars and everything else would be covered up.
Right.
You see? Okay.
Yeah.
So the question then comes, well, I mean, do you really want California, New York, Illinois to decide who your president's going to be?
I would submit to you it's even that's to really drive it home. Mm-hmm. Do you want Los Angeles, New York City, Miami, Florida, Detroit, Chicago, Illinois? That's 5. Take just Houston, Texas. Just figure out the top 6, 7, or 8 major metropolitan areas in the country, and without the Electoral College, that's who's going to elect your president. Is those cities.
We'd be in trouble.
On the popular vote only, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And while you're thinking about that, be honest with yourself about how those cities are run, and whether you like them or not, or do you just live there because you have a job there?
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay because
It's
you're
a hot-
adding
it's a hot topic.
to it. Yeah, it is, and like I got so many notes
And
here,
there's-
people are going to have to do some of your own homework.
Well, but
we'll
there's
get
a
to the
lot of
point.
there's a lot of ever since the 2016, it was already building, and since the 2016 election, they're trying to find every way possible to undermine things, and doing away with the Electoral College is one of those.
It was the same story in the year 2000.
Yes.
When Gore won the popular vote.
Right.
So every time that happens, the D's get all upset.
Because
and
of the Electoral
that's
College.
when they say the Electoral College is bad, it's antiquity.
Which, by the way, is exactly why we have it.
Hey, yeah.
That's their reaction is exactly why it exists in the first place.
Exactly. Now, the 12th Amendment kind of, in the beginning, the first two elections, there was some question.
Oh, yeah.
About, because the way that it was originally set up was you voted for one person.
Yeah.
Okay? And whoever got the most votes was president, and whoever got the second most votes was vice president.
Yeah, that's before we had parties. Right.
They saw, the problem with that.
Right.
So they immediately passed the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, which kind of changed that so that we had parties and you would have a running mate.
Right.
Okay. Okay, I don't want to read the amendment to you.
And by the way, all of Bocce's research will be out on the DocOandShow.com website.
Absolutely, all 12 pages of it.
Right.
Okay. In creating the basic architecture of the American government, the founders struggled to satisfy each state's demand for greater representation while attempting to balance the popular sovereignty against the risk posed by the minority from majoritarian rule. They wanted to empower democratic elements in the American system, but they feared the pure democracy aspect of it. Okay, so
it creates mob rule.
Yeah, exactly. So you have on one hand people arguing, no, it should be by national popular vote, and then you have the other people saying, well, wait a minute, that means my state of Iowa has no input to who our president's going to be. The Electoral College was a compromise that brought both of those things together.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So,
yep.
There have been so many ways that people have been trying to get rid of the Electoral College. The 12th Amendment changed it a little bit, but there was also a proposal to have a lottery for the president. That was another one. Another one wanted to set up an executive committee to determine who the president was going to be.
An executive committee within Congress?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, right?
I wished I'd have been at that meeting.
Yeah. Right? I wish I were a fly on the wall.
That's a great idea, Bubba. I'll buy the first round. It's time to go.
So, and there have been several attempts to get rid of the Electoral College.
Oh, they're going to be ongoing.
Yes, they are. Now, the modern opponents of the Electoral College, being primarily the Democrats in 2000 and the Democrats in 2016, they called the Electoral College anti-democratic. They just don't have a real understanding of how democratic that is. That we have, because we're a republic, not a democracy.
It's becoming more and more apparent that they don't have a good understanding of much lately.
So they want to argue that we should have only a national popular vote. Okay? So presidential candidates would spend most of their time in swing states rather than campaigning for votes across the entire country. There was the incentive to do that. The small and rural states would become irrelevant if we did not, what they call flyover country.
Yeah.
all the people who live in that flyover country would have no say on who was to rule, who their president would be.
Are we getting close to wrap up?
If you want to, yeah. I
know you could keep going.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe we'll take it up again next week too.
Okay, because I haven't really made my biggest point yet.
I know. So let me see if I'm going to head you in that direction.
Okay.
All right. My concern is this, and everyone's concern should be this: millennials,
yes,
young people, live in major metropolitan areas. They have not gotten to they are attracted by a lot of things that are available in major metro areas. The technology, the ease of access to things, don't have to drive, the one particular group in the country has done a wonderful job of recruiting and supplying all the apparent needs of these folks. A few of them, no, but the vast majority of them live in these major metropolitan areas. And so this thing about the popular vote versus the Electoral College is resonating with these young people.
Yes, it is.
It really is.
It really is. Yeah, you got you millennials out there, particularly. You were not taught the truth.
They weren't. Well, they weren't taught. They weren't taught the truth. They weren't taught the value, the validity of the Electoral College and what it means to a democratic republic.
Exactly.
Because they don't even go to the term republic.
That's right.
You know, they don't know what, when you say in the Pledge of Allegiance and to the republic for which it stands, they really don't know what they're saying. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but the vast majority of them.
No, that's very true.
So when we go into Electoral College V2 next week, our mission should be to break this down that it makes sense to that audience.
And one way of
whether
doing
they're
it,
listening or not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because our audience needs to be ready to explain to these knuckleheads why it's important to them that the Electoral College exists.
Exactly.
If for no other reason than the fact they're going to be 55 someday and they want to get the hell out of the city, and they're going to want to be able to vote.
Exactly. Sure.
And have it count.
Sure. Exactly. And I think if you go, and it's in my notes, and you can go in there and look for yourself, number of different elections. I've also attached the electoral maps. You can go there and you can look and see the difference between who would have won if it were popular vote and who would have won if it's the elector. So that's all in my notes. You know, it happened in 1800, 1824, and so on. And
yeah. That's great.
It just kept on
So
happening.
you got some visuals out there.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's
You've got to go to my notes, though, in order to click on them, to bring them up.
Okay.
So even as recent as the electoral map of 2016.
Well, we'll do that in version 2 next week.
Yeah. That's
this is kind of a
fine.
to be continued thing. And it may go on longer than that if we still have things we need to cover.
It depends on what questions we need to come up with.
And if they have questions, who do they write?
They go to Uncle Bocce, UNCLEBACI at DocOwenShow.com.
Bingo.
You can come to me. You can write to me. You can do whatever you want to me.
Are you on Twitter? Are you Uncle Bocce at Twitter?
Yes, I have an Uncle Bocce on Twitter.
At Uncle Bocce.
At Uncle Bocce.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Thank you, Uncle Bocce.
There.
Follow Uncle Bocce on Twitter.
Good.
Hook up with him.
So that's it for tonight, folks.
Good job.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Good.
I didn't expect us to get all the way through it. I expected it to take,
I didn't either.
I expected it to take 2 or 3 weeks because we got to break this down. It's very important.
Oh, it is.
It's very important, and our job of delivering truth to youth means we got to make sure they understand, because I'm telling you, they are buying into this popular vote routine.
Yeah, they are. They are.
They really are. People who should not be. It's confusing. It can be very confusing.
Yes,
we're going to break it down. Okay, let's dive right into our first the next clip, which in the headline of the show, it's called A Border. That's who we were going to interview. We're going to start up. In addition to this electoral thing, we're going to spend a lot of time on illegal immigration and the situation. If you'll notice, one of the shows that we put out there was a repeat of a show we did about 4 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, the last time there was an invasion on our southern border. Mm-hmm. I want you to listen to this. Is a testimony in front of Congress. It's the opening to a testimony by a lady by the name of Chief Carla Provost, and she is a Border Patrol chief. That's her title. So she is in charge of a particular section of our southern border. All right. Okay. Will you play that for us, Mr. Fire?
Patrol. I joined the Border Patrol nearly 25 years ago because of my strong belief in our border security mission. I could never have envisioned that today agents would spend at least 40% of their time as child care professionals, medical caregivers, bus drivers, and food service workers. Time and time again, my agents continue to go above and beyond. Just a few weeks ago, agents rescued a 3-year-old boy abandoned by smugglers in a cornfield with only his name and his parents' phone number written on his shoes. Agents have rescued more than 2,200 migrants endangered by ruthless smugglers so far this year. As we sit here today, thousands more are being encouraged to bring or send their children to our border based on smugglers' false promises of a safe and easy journey. Our apprehension numbers are off the charts compared to recent years. As of April 30th, we apprehended 460,294 people on the southern border. In the last week, we had our highest single day, over 5,200 apprehensions, and our single largest group of 421 illegal aliens. As of Sunday, only 7 months into the year, we have now surpassed the total southwest border apprehensions of every fiscal year since 2009. The number of family units and unaccompanied children has skyrocketed to 64% of southern border apprehensions. So far this year, we've apprehended 248,197 family unit aliens and 44,779 UACs. These populations present significant challenges, not only because of the additional care they require, but because our immigration system treats them differently than single adults. For the first time in Border Patrol history, nearly half of the adults we apprehended in April brought children. They have received the message loud and clear: bring a child, you will be released. In April, we apprehended an average of 2,400 families and children each day. And ICE and HHS lack the capacity to keep up. Since March 19th, Border Patrol has been forced to directly release processed non-criminal family units from locations that are dangerously over capacity, 33,000 people to date. Though we are adding new soft-sided and modular facilities in El Paso, Rio Grande Valley, and Yuma sectors, our short-term holding facilities are still beyond capacity. To address the volume, we've detailed agents from the northern and coastal borders and received assistance from our brothers and sisters in OFO. Even with additional manpower, my field commanders have had to pull agents off the border, reduce task force participation, postpone training, and close checkpoints. We cannot address this crisis by simply shifting more resources or building more facilities. It's like holding a bucket under a faucet. It doesn't matter how many buckets you give me if we can't turn off the flow. To address the flow of illegal immigration, there must be consequences for illegally crossing the border. I've said before, this is both a humanitarian and a border security crisis. But as we focus our resources on the immediate humanitarian needs, we have been forced to put the nation's security at risk. We have apprehended more than 3,500 people with gang affiliation and criminal histories so far this fiscal year, and assaults on my agents are up more than 20%. Single adult apprehensions have reached a 5-year high, 167,318 so far this fiscal year. Of the 3 demographic groups, we have the greatest ability to deliver consequences to single adults. Knowing that, these individuals actively seek to evade law enforcement. Every agent that I pull off the line to process and care for families and children increases the risk that illegal border crossers will get past us, including those smuggling drugs and other contraband. We need to know who, and what is crossing our border, but that is nearly impossible when our manpower is diverted. Cocaine seizures this year have far exceeded last year's total. In January, we seized more than 700 pounds of cocaine being smuggled across the Rio Grande while agents were occupied with large groups of families nearby. And I worry how much more is getting past us. Simply put, we have been forced to put our border security and our national security at risk. ICE is quickly running out of space to detain adults during their immigration proceedings. My greatest concern is that we will have to begin releasing single adults. We must maintain the ability to deliver consequences, or we will lose control of the border. My men and women are doing everything they can to meet this challenge, but Border Patrol cannot do this alone. Our nation cannot solve today's crisis using yesterday's legal framework. This outdated framework has not only tied our hands, but has driven hundreds of thousands of people to risk their lives on the dangerous journey to our border. Smuggling organizations have built an entirely new line of business around these families and children. It is highly lucrative and provides a distraction that helps them cash in on other illicit activities. When my agents are working on the border, they know that smugglers and their scouts are watching their every move. Rest assured, they are watching what we do here in Washington, and they are banking on inaction. Crisis is the word so many are now using to describe the border, but now we need more than words. It's time to act. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Owen?
So,
good afternoon, Chairman Cornyn, Ranking Member Durbin, members.
I don't know who that Mr. Owen was, but I was certainly glad I was called on.
Wow.
The congressman up there with the same last name.
There you go.
Got my slot. He can have it. So I thought that important. She was not obviously, but she's reading from notes. She has a notebook in front of her. Those numbers are not memorized. This is an almost 30-year veteran of the Border Patrol a female that has worked her ways up through the ranks to be in charge of a group of Border Patrol agents. She's a very serious individual. I had seen her before standing beside Trump in one of his visits to the border. I got a feeling that the president met her and said, I need you to come with me.
Right.
Because of who she is and what she knows and just the reality of her speaking. All right. Now, what did she just say? What we need to do is act, right?
Absolutely.
The third title in the show is Nonsense, right? Go ahead and start that clip. And we may, I may figure out a way to talk over it or something like that. I don't know exactly how that works or if we can make that work. But so instead of dealing with the issues at hand, our House of Representatives, which is now controlled by the Democrats, is totally eat up with the dumbass. They don't like the results of the Mueller report, so they're attacking William Barr, the new Attorney General, as if he is a liar and a front man, and they're spreading absolute nonsense and bullsugar to try to get at him while they should be working. So there are a couple of people in Congress by the name of Jim Jordan and another congressman by the name of Getz that have a little pushback from Mr. Jerry Nadler, who's the head of the committee. And you're in for about 10 or 15 minutes, but it's what us conservatives call conservative porn. Listen up.
I would simply observe that, to his credit, Mr. Jordan has been second to none in asking for access to the materials we're asking for the. And I simply ask him: does he still think is he still supporting his own request for that the committee and the Congress be given access to the entire report and the underlying information?
Consistent with the law, and I would ask the chairman. My understanding is Mr. Mueller's going to be here next week. Why are we doing it? You're going to get to ask the guy who wrote the whole darn document. We're all going to get asked him questions. Why don't you hold off on this contempt until at least the guy who wrote the thing spent 22 months and $35 million with a whole bunch of Democrat lawyers putting it together. Why don't you wait and ask him next week before we do this contempt resolution?
I'll answer, well, essentially because it would be useful to read the material before we have him in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to see that the microphone's working this week. My good friend from Georgia just asked the operative question. How can we impeach if we don't get the documents? How can we impeach if we don't get the documents? Ladies and gentlemen, this hearing is not about the Attorney General. It's not about the Mueller report, 92% of which everyone in America has had the opportunity to read. It's not about the fact that even the portions that the American people haven't been able to read, the chairman's been able to go read had he chosen. This is all about impeaching the president. Now, why don't they just say it? Why don't they just jump to the impeachment proceedings like their liberal media overlords are telling them to do? Well, the reason is that the American people don't support impeachment. And it's easy to understand why. They actually went and elected Donald Trump president of the United States. And I don't think people are going to support impeaching a president who's doing so well. I mean, you got 3.2% growth in the economy. The Trump economy is hot. And the reason we're doing so well is as a consequence of the president's policies. And so at a time when my Democrat colleagues are focused on the next election and not solutions to the problems facing Americans, they can't attack the president's policies because people are doing well. So typically they roll next to identity politics, that based on what you look like, who you pray to, or who you love, you can't possibly support Republicans. But African Americans are doing better. Hispanics are doing better. Women are doing better. We are seeing a rising tide that is truly lifting all boats in this country. And so now we have this effort, not to argue with policies, not to typically go to the identity politics that functions as the organizing principle of today's Democratic Party. They have to delegitimize the guy that won, delegitimize the guy that people voted for, but they don't have the guts to do it directly, and so they're going after the Attorney General. Now, the gentleman from Georgia in his last remark said, we are hiding behind the rules. Hiding behind the rules. These are federal laws that dictate what the Attorney General can and cannot do. We're not hiding behind the rules. We just like to follow them. By the way, it's not following the rules that got us in this trouble in the first place. When the Inspector General testified before us, he said it's the fundamental fact that during the investigations of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, you saw continuous examples of a one-off here, a violation of protocol there. The Inspector General said never before had he seen a circumstance where the very same team that was investigating Hillary Clinton would then go and investigate the other person that was involved in the 2016 presidential contest. About a month ago, in this committee, I laid out the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I think that folks watching at home can probably follow along and see where we're headed. First, my Democratic colleagues were in denial. When they saw that there was no collusion, after saying for 22 months that the president was an agent of the Russian government, after saying for 22 months that there was actual evidence of collusion, they were in denial when they saw the conclusion that there wasn't. Then there was anger. It had to be the Attorney General's fault. Mueller didn't make a decision on obstruction. Somebody had to. The Attorney General did. So they got mad at him. And we had this whole kerfluffle of anger. Well, now we know the third step: bargaining. Well, Mr. Attorney General, you've given us 92% of the Mueller report, but we have to bargain for the remaining 8% because that's really where we think the action is. Well, Mr. Attorney General, you spent 5 hours before the Senate Judiciary Committee. 3 of our presidential candidates got to question you. You offered to come before the House Judiciary Committee. You offered to come for an additional hour of questioning, but we have to bargain so that our staff lawyers can ask you questions. Now, I don't think it's a good sign that the next sign after bargaining is depression. So I feel for my Democrat colleagues, but after that we get to acceptance, and that's sure something that I'm looking forward to, because there are some really good ideas that my Democratic colleagues have once they kind of get to acceptance on the no Russia collusion thing. My friend, the gentleman from Rhode Island, has excellent ideas about how to change the way that consumers interface with big tech companies. My colleague from the state of New York is right, that if the First Step Act is the only Step Act, then that would be a bad thing. We need to do more on criminal justice reform. My colleague who's not with us from California, Mr. Swalwell, he's got great ideas to unlock potential cures with medical cannabis reform, but we're not doing any of those things. And by the way, I bet a bunch of my friends on the other side of the aisle low-key wish that their actual bills that would impact the lives of Americans would get heard instead of this garbage. The Obama administration ran an intel operation against the Trump campaign. Peter Strzok opened it up, the dossier kept it going, and now the Democrats need to get over it. I yield back.
Bill Barr is following the law, and what's his reward? Democrats are going to hold him in contempt. I don't think today's actually about getting information. I don't think it's about getting the unredacted Mueller report. I don't think last week's hearing was actually about having staff question the Attorney General. I think it's, as my colleague said earlier, I think it's all about trying to destroy Bill Barr because Democrats are nervous he's going to get to the bottom of everything. He's going to find out how and why this investigation started in the first place. Never forget what Bill Barr said a few weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago when he testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee. Said a lot of important things, but he said four very interesting things. First, he said there was a failure of leadership at the upper echelon, term he used, upper echelon of the FBI. We all know that's the case. Director Comey's been fired. Deputy Director McCabe fired, lied 3 times under oath according to the Inspector General. FBI counsel Jim Baker demoted and left, currently under investigation by the Justice Department. Lisa Page demoted and left. Peter Strzok, Deputy Head of Counterintelligence, demoted and fired. Peter Strzok, the guy who ran the Clinton investigation and the Russian investigation. There was certainly a failure of leadership at the upper echelon of the FBI. Second thing the Attorney General said 3.5 weeks ago in front of the Senate Finance Committee. Spying did occur. Said it twice. Yes, spying did occur. Third, he said, there's a basis for my concern about the spying that took place. And maybe the most interesting thing, 2 terms he used that frankly I find frightening. He said there was, in his judgment, he thinks there may have been unauthorized surveillance and political surveillance. Scary terms. We got to go back to January 3rd, 2017. Senator Schumer on the Rachel Maddow show talking about then President-elect Trump says this. If you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Now, I don't know if the FBI went after President Trump in 6 ways, but I sure know they went after him in 2 ways. And the first one is the now famous dossier. On October 21st, 2016, the FBI used one party's opposition research document as the basis to go to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on the other party's campaign. That happened. Democrat National Committee, the Clinton campaign, paid Perkins Coie law firm, who hired Fusion GPS, who then hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who did what? Talked to Russians and put together this salacious, unverified document that became the basis to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. They did it. And when they went to the court, they didn't tell them important things like who paid for it. They didn't tell them that Christopher Steele had already told the FBI and the Justice Department that he was, quote, desperate to stop Trump. And they didn't tell the court that Christopher Steele had been fired by the FBI because he's out talking to the press. They did that. And second, just last Thursday, New York Times story, FBI sent investigator posing as an assistant to meet with the Trump aide in 2016. FBI sent someone in, pretending to be somebody else, to talk with George Papadopoulos, who was with the Trump campaign. You know what they call that? It's called spying. They did it. They did it twice, and who knows how much more. And what I know is Bill Barr has said he's going to get to the bottom of it. And think about the term he used again. This is important. Political surveillance in the United States of America. I will not yield. Think about that term. He's going to get to he said he's going to put a team together, going to investigate all this. This is critical. And never forget the guy who ran this investigation, Peter Strzok, ran the Clinton investigation and then launched and ran the Trump-Russia investigation. Never forget what he said. Trump should lose $100 million to zero. We need an insurance policy. Told Lisa Page, don't worry, Lisa, we'll stop Trump. This is what Bill Barr wants to investigate. And as my colleagues have said, this is the House Judiciary Committee, with the history this committee has in protecting fundamental liberties and protecting the Constitution. Last week there was another important document Emmett Flood, sent to the Attorney General. I just want to read a couple sentences. Under our system of government, unelected executive branch officers and intelligence agency personnel are supposed to answer to the person elected by the people, the president, and not the other way around. This is not a Democrat or